Our neighborhoods, not a whole lot right now. Let's check on Tropical Storm Andrew and see what the latest position is as of 5 o'clock. We have 13.4 north latitude and the longitude 45.3 west. Winds are 45 miles per hour. That's Andrew right there swirling about in the middle of the Atlantic. The condition of its movement right now out of the west, or moving toward the west-northwest at 23 miles per hour. And as it does so, it's still 1,050 miles away from the leading edge of the Lesser Antilles, so not a whole lot of danger to anybody right now. But it does show some signs of strengthening, and overnight we'll watch this.
Tropical Storm Andrew holding its own in the Atlantic tonight, and of course we all want to know what that means for us. Meteorologist Brian Norcross.
Okay, Kelly, here's the latest location on Andrew, just to kind of put it on the map for you. 425 miles to the east-northeast of Puerto Rico there. Puts it about 1,400 miles from us here. Top winds at 50. Moving to the west-northwest at 21, and that still is moving very quickly, and that's one reason the storm is not developing very much. Let's look at the satellite picture, then I'll give you some idea of where we think this thing's going to go. Let's move the name out of the way. There you go. Here is Andrew right down here. Now, the system, as it comes through the day here today, let's go ahead and roll the loop now and watch it as it moves north of the islands. The good news is Andrew is clearly going to stay, it looks like right now, north of the islands. Here on the wider view, you can see it. Here it comes right in here. Now, this system up here is the one that has been affecting it and keeping it from developing. But as it moves north of the islands and this moves away, we think it could strengthen some right in here. Now, coming up in a few minutes, I'll give you an idea where we think it's going to be tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday, because we definitely need to be paying close attention here toward the end.
Meantime, old Tropical Storm Andrew is still kicking up. Brian Norcross joins us to give us the latest. Brian?
Kelly holding his own, I think would be the best way to put it. 45-mile-an-hour winds now, not very high. Moving northwest to 12, which is a slower forward motion. Here you see the course of the storm. It took that little jog last night and ran into big trouble in here from some upper air winds. On the satellite picture, you can see the system to the north. It's this one up here that's affecting Andrew down here. And the circulation around this system has kind of shifted the whole storm off-center, so to speak, and that has disrupted the circulation around it. But if Andrew holds together and moves over in here, conditions will be more favorable, and that's why we have to continue to watch it very closely. I'll tell you all about that coming up in just a moment.
From your 24-hour news source, Channel 4 News continues.
Brian Norcross keeping an eye on Andrew, not Prince Andrew, since everyone's thinking about the royals these days.
Everyone is? Yeah,
well, a lot of people. Not you, of course.
No, of course not. Let me tell you what the deal is here.
Okay.
I only give this storm about a 50-50 chance of surviving at all, but if it survives and it moves over into the area where the conditions are more favorable, then it could be a threat to somewhere in the southeast United States, including somewhere in Florida. So that's why we're watching it so closely, just because of where it's positioned out there. We'll get to that in just a second, but check the live growth game. You see a lot of high clouds. Our atmosphere has changed over a little bit here, and we're going to have a few more showers around than we have had. 86 is the temperature downtown Miami now. 84 is what it should be. 94 is what it feels like, with the humidity at 69%, wind southeast at 6, and no rain here. Once again today, is it ever going to rain here in downtown? We haven't had it in a while. 87 at Miami Airport, 86 on the beach, 85 Fort Lauderdale. Kendall, 86. West Palm Beach now is 85. Allergy report today, molds and pollens both moderate. Ragweed, good old ragweed, the main offender according to Dr. Phil. Here is the Clearview radar now. You see where all the rain has gone, at least the heavy rain, over to the west coast, or almost to the west coast. Big thunderstorms here west of Lake Okeechobee, huge storms there, and a couple showers offshore. So we're going to have to keep a chance of showers in the forecast through the evening and nighttime hours, but just a slight chance. Here you go with storm strike, and we're looking at the lightning strikes. Each one of these indicates an actual lightning strike that took place beginning at 1 o'clock this afternoon. And we had a line that started up there, West Pompano Beach, Tamarack area, down through Sunrise, and then west of Hialeah. This is I-75, or this is the turnpike right in here, I-75 right up here. So came right down and eventually ended up out in the Everglades, but again, mostly in the inland sections. Okay, let's get on to Tropical Storm Andrew now to locate it for you. 22.3, 62.5. 45-mile-an-hour winds, which is down 5 miles an hour from yesterday. Moving northwest at 12, which is slower. Pressure very, very high. 1,500 miles from Miami and about 350 miles or so from Puerto Rico there. Now, the projected place where Andrew would be if it hangs together, which is the big question. Puts it about here on Saturday, somewhere in that arc, somewhere in this arc on Sunday. So you see it's in an area here north of Hispaniola. Now let's go to the satellite pictures. I'll show you why that is significant. Here, first of all, is the still picture. The center of the storm is right down in here. Notice all the weather is shifted east because of upper air winds blowing across the system. Now go to the satellite loop. And here the computer is showing you that most intense part of the storm, remembering the center is on this bottom side here. And watch it closely. You'll see it shift left, and then I think in the last two pictures, again, it's shifting north. This system up above it, this upper low, is kind of pulling on it. The question is that going to get out of the way and allow Andrew to shift west? Because right in here, this is high pressure, which is favorable for Andrew. So if the storm there makes it over this far, that's when we're going to be more concerned about it, because it will have the potential to develop, and that's why that Saturday and Sunday forecast is significant. For us here, for the boaters, east to southeast winds at 10 knots, seas near 2 feet, a light chop in the bay, 86 degrees in the surf. There's your sunrise and your sunset times. Tonight, a few showers hanging around, just spotty, about 78. 92 tomorrow, sunny times, a few more storms expected, and maybe a few showers in the morning, too. Over the weekend, same kind of story, but the beach still looks like it's the best over the weekend. That's it. We'll check Andrew again at 11. Here's
in that greenhouse back.
Just in case, we'll tell you what you need.
A gunman, 3 kids, and a mother, the outcome of a tense hostage situation.
At that point, we went to the ground. He was on top of me. He still had my arms pushed up into my back, and he still had it.
A South Florida woman cries police brutality, the exclusive Broward investigation. And the royal ruckus continues. Wait till you see the latest Fergie fiasco.
I'm Kelly Craig. Tom Randalls is off. Jerry Helfman joins me next for the Channel 4 News at 6.
Watch our teamwork. Channel 4 News.
From your 24-hour news source, this is Channel 4 News at 6. With Kelly Craig, Tom Randalls, meteorologist Brian Norcross, weather, Tony Segreto, sports, and the Channel 4 News team.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Tropical Storm Andrew topping the Channel 4 News at 6. We're watching it very closely as it churns in the Atlantic. What does it mean for South Florida? Team coverage beginning with Channel 4 meteorologist Brian Norcross.
Kelly, Andrew has not strengthened during the day today, but certainly has strengthened since this time yesterday. Top winds now at 60 miles an hour, moving to the west-northwest at 9. If you remember, last night it was moving northwesterly. So here the path shows you that northwestward movement through the day yesterday, and now the turn on a more westerly course. Now, of course, the steering currents, that river of air that drives where these storms go, is all critical here. And the question is, what's going on to the north of it? Here you see the storm this morning. There's the eye as it developed. Now, this afternoon, we got a little obscuration over the eye there. But notice the bands feeding into the storm, all indications of a developing storm. The pressures in the center of the storm have started to drop. They have been exceptionally high and now starting to drop. So all these lend credence to the idea that Andrew is indeed strengthening and may very well be a hurricane soon, maybe even tonight, if not certainly tomorrow. Now, we have Dr. Bob Sheets with us live from the Hurricane Center. Bob, are you expecting Andrew to become a hurricane pretty quickly here?
Yes, Brian. As a matter of fact, I put a little different enhancement on here now, and you can see that the convection, the shower thunderstorm activity around the center of the storm has started to develop on the south side. That's the first time that that's happened in the life of this storm, and so when that airplane goes back through there again, I expect to see the pressure dropping.
Now, we're looking at our models here, as you are there, I know, all showing high pressure to the north, in other words, tending to push Andrew south, not allowing it to go north. What are your models saying? I know there's a little divergence there of opinion.
Well, that's right. It depends on which model you look at. If you look at the model that tries to predict what the environment looks like around the hurricane, it's predicting a big high pressure area to develop in this area. There's some weakness in that right now, but when that high pressure area does develop there, we are expecting the storm to start turning on a more westward track similar to this.
I know yesterday as the aircraft was in there, actually the winds that we were finding were higher than we expected based on the pressure we were measuring. How's that going right now?
Well, that's right. It was what we call a very asymmetric storm, because at that time when the storm was way down here, we had a tremendous high pressure there, a large gradient between the storm and the high pressure up here. So the winds then were actually stronger than they are right now. But I expect this now to start coming back up and indeed probably be stronger than it was yesterday and reach hurricane strength sometime within the next 12 hours or so.
All right, Bob, we'll stay in close touch with you there.
Thank you.
All right, the bottom line for us, of course, is that this is not an issue for our weekend, except in terms of preparing for a hurricane. Kelly?
What should we be doing right now at this point, Brian, in terms of preparedness?
Kelly, you should be doing the things that you should have done back on June 1st, the beginning of the hurricane season, is to be sure that you have the supplies in your home so you don't get caught in the crush right before the storm. Be sure that you have a way to protect your windows, which are all important. In fact, I'm going to tell you a lot more about that. And answer the question for absolute sure, does tape do any good? We'll have that answer for you in just a few minutes.
All right, we'll see you then. Thank you. Jerry?
Hurricane season is nearly halfway over, and we haven't even whispered the word hurricane. That means lots of folks are not prepared, just in case. That's where we pick up team coverage with Channel 4's Ed Odell.
How you doing? You buying anything for the hurricane?
For the hurricane?
The hurricane.
Andrew.
Yeah.
No, we're ready for Andrew.
The next one, that one is going to be closer, then we're going to get ready.
Confident hurricane forecasting seems to be a trend among preparedness procrastinators, even those who think they have enough to get by.
Canned food, water, all that stuff, candles, flashlights. Yeah.
You just don't believe them?
Nah, I've been here for 25 years and I'm still waiting for one to get here.
Have you seen people coming out this year yet?
Not as much as last year, with no scares, no nothing really. Up until now, it's been pretty slow.
Home Depot making it easy for the early preparers, a one-stop hurricane shopping area, providing numerous essentials like nails, batteries, and flashlights. It's easy before the hurricane is knocking at the door.
Just like a grocery store, same thing. If they wait till the last second, it gets crazy.
Just before a storm hits, batteries sell out, followed by plywood. Most cautious shoppers agree the best way to ensure that a black cloud has a silver lining is to prepare for a hurricane when the sun is shining.
Basically buy all the stuff I need and take care of it.
Flashlights, a first aid kit, fire extinguisher, plywood to board up windows, and most important, 2 quarts of drinking water per day per person are the essentials you need to be prepared in a hurricane. In West Dade, Ed Odell, Channel 4 News.
Well, if you don't have one yet, remember you can pick up a free copy of the Hurricane Preparedness Booklet at any Home Depot or Pizza Hut, courtesy of Channel 4. Team coverage doesn't stop here. In just 10 minutes, we'll take a look at your windows. Would they weather a storm? Brian Norcross has the special report at 6:13. And just a reminder, our weekend watch begins at sunrise tomorrow. Starting at 6 a.m., we'll have live updates, including the latest from the National Hurricane Center. That's tomorrow morning at 6 on the weekend edition of Today in South Florida.
A gunman storms his estranged wife's house, holding her and her baby hostage.
And we're looking at a pretty good weekend weather-wise, despite Andrew, right, Brian?
Andrew isn't going to bother us at all this weekend, but it's going to be one of those things where the beach is going to be a little better here. But everyone wants to know exactly how close it's going to get. So I put together a map here to give you an idea of what the computer is saying. Now, notice once again we have these big arcs because of the uncertainty. But you see, by afternoon on Sunday, we're talking about it being, maybe 600 miles from here, or 500 to 600 miles from here. But notice it's approaching the Bahamas by afternoon on Monday. So certainly over the weekend, especially by late in the weekend, everyone within the sound of my voice and everyone up and down the coast of Florida needs to know where Andrew is, because at that point it will be threatening somebody, we're just about certain, and probably as a hurricane. Okay, let's look outside now. We have just a couple of kind of puffy clouds out there as we look out over Biscayne Bay with a live Grove cam. Current numbers downtown here, 85 degrees is our temperature with the humidity 81%. Winds east at 6, gusting to 21 on the beach. The barometer 30.04 and falling, but no effect on our barometer from Andrew yet. And no rain here, or maybe just a little trace of rain in our rain gauge, and that's about it. Okay, here's the story on the radar. You see some showers offshore. They'll be drifting in tonight, so once again we're in the mode where we're going to see some showers around first thing in the morning, and then thunderstorms inland after that. Now to Andrew, so you can plot it with us. Here's the map we showed you before where it's going to be. Now onto the coordinates. 25.2 north, 65.4 west, 60-mile-an-hour winds moving west-northwest at 9, bringing in this direction right here so far. And there's the pressure, 2965. Now the pressure on the storm has been exceptionally high. It has now started to drop, indicating a maturing storm, and as I say, on the road to becoming a hurricane. So we look at the wide view here. You see Andrew here. Now we have this little pressure system. Remember, high pressure systems rotate clockwise. clockwise, and that's developing to the north. And then this is all low pressure back in here that would push Andrew north if the storm came in and everything else stayed the same. The problem is things aren't staying the same. We'll go to the satellite picture. First of all, for the close-up, as we go through the day today, watch the eye develop right in here. Let's roll the loop now. And what you're going to see is the eye going to pop up right in there. Now watch. Boom, right there. You just saw it just for a second. But notice now what we're getting is colored area, in other words, intense thunderstorms up above and below the eye, indicating a symmetrical storm, and that indicates a stronger storm. So that's why we know that we have a storm that is actually increasing in strength. On this satellite picture, notice this up here pushing in. This is high pressure pushing into the north. So that's going to keep Andrew from coming north, and it's actually going to pull all this low pressure north. So as that's up there, we're going to have to monitor Andrew to determine exactly which angle it takes as it comes close to the coast first part of next week. Here's your forecast now for South Florida for the boaters. East to southeast winds 10 knots, 2 feet or so in the open sea, light chop in the bay, 86 in the surf. Few storms around, especially later on tonight, about 78, 90 tomorrow, off and on sunshine. Some storms again, especially inland. Sunday again, storms around, and then afternoon inland and a high about 90. We'll be here all evening long, and we'll see at the top of every hour with the latest on Andrew. Here's
Channel 4 News.
From your 24-hour news source, this is the Channel 4 News Nightcast. Number 1 at 11 with Tom Randalls, Kelly Craig, meteorologist Brian Norcross, weather, Tony Segreto, sports, and the Channel 4 News team.
The season's first tropical storm moves closer to the southeast U.S., but will it hit and where? Nobody knows. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Tracking Tropical Storm Andrew, the latest advisory is just in. Team coverage begins now with meteorologist Brian Norcross.
Kelly, we have the latest information, and it's been a very interesting evening here with Andrew. Top winds now at 65 miles per hour. That's up just a little bit. Moving to the west-northwest, about 10 miles per hour. That's slightly faster, although not much. Here we've located it for you. You see the track making a little bit of a bend in a more westerly direction, putting it about 750 miles to the east of us here in southeast Florida. I say it's been interesting because look at the satellite sequence. So we go this afternoon. There was the eye right there. And remember, the brighter the colors there, the more intense thunderstorms. And clearly through the evening this evening, the number of intense thunderstorms has been decreasing on the satellite, and the system has been getting more ragged. But in spite of that, the pressure's been going down and the wind speed is up just a little bit. So it's sort of a conflict going on there. Also, I think you can see a little bit of a turn to the left there. Now, what does all that mean, and why do we have that conflict going on? We have Miles Lawrence with us from the National Hurricane Center. Miles, isn't that an unusual sort of situation? Are you seeing that on your satellite there, the sort of decrease in the amount of thunderstorm activity?
Yes, the satellite presentation is not very impressive tonight, and as you mentioned, in spite of that, the pressure has dropped 3 millibars during the past 6 hours, and on that basis, we've upped the wind 5 miles an hour.
Now, you have aircraft in there pretty much continuously, is that right?
Yes, about every 3 hours, we're sending a plane into the center of the storm.
All right, the system, you've increased its forward speed a little bit, but on the models here that we're looking at, and also I know what you have there, it's showing high pressure is tending to push on it. You expect that forward speed is going to eventually decrease?
Yes, the increase in forward speed during the past several hours has been very small, only 1 mile per hour, and we've got it up to 10 miles per hour. Now, all of our guidance suggests that it's going to slow down slower than the 10 miles an hour that it's moving now.
Now, this sort of disruption in the circulation of the storm we're seeing on the satellite, are you taking that as a temporary thing? And we've seen that several times with this storm. It's been kind of a coming and going kind of thing. Yes, the storm has kind of like been sputtering for several days now, and perhaps this is temporary. We believe that in the big picture that the environmental conditions are not hostile for further development over the next couple of days. All right, Miles, of course, we'll stay in close touch with you folks down there. Thanks a lot. Okay. All right, we'll have the coordinates for you coming up in just a few minutes, and we'll have also other views of the thing and give you an idea where we think it might be going over the weekend. Have that for you, Jerry.
Okay, Brian, thank you. Well, what should you do if Tropical Storm Andrew becomes a direct threat to South Florida? Team coverage continues with Channel 4's Brian Allen.
If you did not lay in supplies when hurricane season started June 1st, you may want to seriously think about stocking up this weekend. With Andrew lurking in the Atlantic, it is not too late to get you and your house ready. It is too late to have storm shutters installed. But If you get up and head out to a lumberyard tomorrow, you can still protect your windows. So far, the rush to get the plywood, to get the windows boarded up, hasn't been that rapid. One thing you got to remember, though, is if you come out looking for the plywood, you're going to have to give them some time. Each piece has got to be cut to fit your window. Then you've got to go home and drill the holes to get the window ready so you can cover it. A couple other things, though, you need to get is water. At least 2 quarts per person per day. Also food, candles, matches, and also a radio, just so you can keep tuned of what's going on. Also, plenty of batteries. But one of the biggest priorities, though, will be the plywood. And if Andrew starts to bear down, this place will be a zoo. You will also want to have duct tape, a fire extinguisher, a first aid kit, and canned or packaged food on hand. If you take prescription medication, make sure you have extras. The best advice is not to wait until the last minute. If Andrew becomes a threat, stores will be crowded and items will be snatched up right away.
I'm just gonna wing it. I don't know. I'm gonna do my best and hope I don't get in any trouble.
In Miami, Brian Allen, Channel 4 News.
And just a reminder, our weekend watch begins at sunrise tomorrow. Starting at 6 a.m., we'll have live updates, including the latest from the National Hurricane Center. That's tomorrow morning at 6 on the weekend edition of Today in South Florida.
24-hour news source. Channel 4 News continues.
Brian Norcross here with an Andrew update. Not the easiest storm to follow, Brian.
Well, because it's acting a little bizarrely. You know, weak storms do this kind of thing because they're just on the fringe of hanging together. But it's still a potent enough system that we got to pay attention to it.
Right.
And I would give it an equal chance anywhere in Florida at this point.
Despite what you're seeing
Despite
tonight.
what we see tonight, where it seems like it's going north, it's still far enough away, and the systems are variable enough and unreliable enough and unpredictable enough that we still have to say an equal chance just about anywhere along the Florida coast. But so when is it going to be where, and is it going to hit anywhere? If we were to ask what are the possibilities, is it going to hit anybody? I would say most likely yes. Somebody is going to get a storm out of this. Is there about an equal chance that we're going to get it versus Jacksonville versus maybe even as far north as Charleston? Yes, I would say that's true too. Now, here's where we see the storm locating on one of those lines at those times. Starting with tomorrow afternoon, we expect a hurricane, Andrew, at that time, and we expect it to be right where you see that dashed line. Then by Sunday afternoon, approaching the Bahamas in the worst case if it was as far to the left as possible. And by Monday afternoon, very close to the northern Bahamas if it's the far left end of that line or the bottom end of that line. So if it were to go a little bit faster, of course, the Bahamas would be threatened by Monday, and we could be threatened, or the east coast of Florida by late Monday with just a little increase in forward speed. So over the weekend, everybody in the state of Florida needs to pay close attention to Andrew. Let's check outside now, and then I'll get the coordinates for you, and you can go ahead and plot it with us. 82 is our current temperature, and the humidity is 82%. Winds out of the southeast at only 2 miles an hour. Barometer is rising, and just a trace of rain in our rain gauge here with a little shower that came through this morning. And the Clearview radar is showing you lots of showers have developed offshore in just the last couple hours, and they're going to move in. We're going to have the same kind of situation with some pretty good showers around here first thing in the morning. Okay, here's the story on Andrew now. You want to plot it with us at 25.6 north, 66.5 west, top winds up just a little bit to 65 miles an hour, moving west-northwest at 10. We put it about 750 miles to the east of Miami, and there's the pressure, which has gone down fairly significantly in the last few hours, in spite of the fact that the satellite, which we'll show you in just a second, is looking much more ragged, and the weather systems are, as I was saying, are really hard to plot exactly. Now, I've put them on the wide view of the satellite picture here to give you an idea what's going on currently. Now, currently, I want to stress currently, because here we have a little high pressure system, just a little one tucked up just to the northwest of Andrew, and that's going to try and keep Andrew from going too far in that direction. Here we have an area of low pressure. You see all these clouds, and then another big high up to the north, nosing in and trying to nose down, right down there, around the back of Andrew, and that would tend to kind of push and scoot it along. Well, into the future, what we think is going to happen is this low pressure is going to go away. These two highs are going to merge and end up being a big high pressure system over the top of Andrew. The question is, how strong is that high going to be? That's really the bottom line. Now, let's look at the satellite picture. Starting a little earlier this afternoon, there was the eye right there. Now, watch as we go through the day here today and then through the evening hours. And what you see is the amount of color in the picture is shrinking, indicating not as as many strong thunderstorms, but still plenty of spiral action in the storm there, and the aircraft in the storm is measuring pretty strong winds, so that's why we think that things are going to continue to develop. Now, here we go on the other satellite picture, the wide view. Here's that high to the north I was telling you about, and you notice it's trying to nose down over here and kind of get behind Andrew and kind of create a shield over the top and keep it from going any further to the north or much further north. But, of course, a little bit of an angle difference makes a lot of difference once you get out 700 miles. And that's why it's very, very hard to tell. That little bit of difference just doesn't make any significant amount of statistical difference in the long range. So we got to stay on top of this thing over the weekend and just see exactly what happens. For the boaters, east winds over the weekend at 10 to 15 knots, 2 to 4 feet in the open sea, moderate chop in the bay, 87 degrees in the surf. Tonight, a few showers moving in. A couple of them could be pretty heavy, about 78. 90 tomorrow and on Sunday, kind of off and on sunshine, and some storms again first thing in the morning near the coast, inland in the afternoon. We'll be here all weekend long, and we hope you will be too, and keep you up to date. Jerry and Kelly.
Okay, Brent, thanks.
That is the Channel 4 News Nightcast. The Tonight Show with Jay Leno is next.
And be sure to tune in for Today in South Florida tomorrow morning at 6. Good night.
And good morning. Thanks for tuning in. Andrew here, our hurricane, which continues to strengthen. Pressure now down to 974 millibars. The Air Force plane is out there, and that's what the pressure reading that they extrapolated down to the surface has come in to be. And think about that. The 5 a.m. advisory was 994 millibars, and now we're down to 974. So that's a 20 millibar drop in quite a short period of time, and that does indicate right there, just from pressure alone, that we have a rapid intensifying cyclone here. Winds at 75 miles an hour. This is the 5 a.m. advisory again, 25.8, 67.5 west, 625 miles to the east of Nassau, or about 800 miles to the east, southeast of Miami right now. Again, it appears from the satellite indication that we do have a strengthening hurricane, and the new advisory should be in about 10 minutes or so. So we'll get that to you as soon as we get it in. All right, here's the infrared satellite picture. And what we've done is color the tops. And the reason we've done that is because we can show you the deep convection indicated by here, the yellow and the red. Now watch what happens as we go on in time. The yellow and the red wrap all the way around the center of circulation. And when those thunderstorms just keep developing and keep developing around the center like that, that's also another indication of a strengthening storm. And look what's happened in the past couple of hours here. A very, very definitive eye, even with the infrared satellite picture here. And this is something that you really have to pay attention to, because we've got a strengthening hurricane. The forecast track takes it toward the Florida coastline within 72 to 80 hours. And that's about 2-3 days away here as we look at it. And, you know, granted, that is a long time away. It's something to watch, especially as we get up here to 75, perhaps even 100 miles an hour winds. So obviously something to watch here in time. This is the visible satellite picture. And as the sun comes up, you can get a very, very nice look at the eye. You can also see how bright these white clouds are around the center. That's what you saw with the yellow and the red on the infrared. This is the deep convection, the deep thunderstorms, indicating to us that we do have a strengthening hurricane. And it actually, if you plot where the plane is and where they are flying in the center of the eye, the thing has actually jogged more west than north in the past couple of hours. Interesting. You betcha. 75 to 85 miles away from the center. That's where we find the tropical storm winds all the way around the center and through here. So this is something that we're going to continue to look at for you and watch as it makes its way toward the Bahamas and also Florida, perhaps. And we'll have to, again, it's something that we have to watch. It's still 2-3 days away, but something obviously that is developing and could become a very big concern to Florida. All right, we look at the entire Atlantic for you. Away
Atlantic side, and Andrew is turning into a very strong storm, intensifying rapidly. Winds have gone from 75 miles an hour earlier this morning to 90 miles an hour. We have the 11 o'clock update. This is the way things look at this time concerning Andrew. If you're plotting, 25.9 north, 69 degrees west. Let's put the satellite into motion, color the cloud tops for you. Of course, the colors of orange and red indicate the highest clouds, which you can see wrapping in a cyclonic fashion around the eye, which is right in there. In fact, the eye has become much more well-defined during the past couple of hours, indicating that Andrew continues to steadily intensify. Here's a visible satellite picture beginning early this morning, just as the sun was coming up. But watch as the sun gets higher in the sky, how it's reflecting off the very heavy cloud cover around the center of Andrew. Again, the eye showing up very well right there, the eye wall surrounding the center of the storm. Andrew should continue its westward movement Again, there's high pressure up in here, and it's going to force Andrew in a westerly direction for probably at least the next 72 hours. Already hurricane watches have been issued for the northern part of the Bahama Island chain, and that means, of course, that hurricane conditions are possible.
Well, we have a hurricane off each coast in the Pacific. This is Lester threatening the Baja Peninsula of California. It might bring some rain up into the U.S. The one we're most concerned about, though, is Hurricane Andrew off the east coast of the United States. And I'll show you the latest particulars on that based on the Hurricane Center advisory. At 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, center at 25.9, 69.7. That's just 655 miles now, due east of Miami, Florida, and it continues to move just about straight toward the west at 14 miles per hour. Top winds now up to 95 miles an hour, and the barometric pressure is 974 millibars, or 28.76 inches. We can show you this picture in motion and show you an extremely well-developed hurricane, and you can follow that eye yourself as it moves on toward the west. Again, it's moving west in the general direction now of Florida at 14 miles per hour. We have another type of picture, and in just a second we'll load the colors for you here and show you what's going on. Right there is the center of circulation, and when these colors get loaded, we'll show you the very bright clouds associated with the highest tops. And you can also get your perspective here. You can see it's not that far from Florida. There are the northern Bahamas, and there you see this very well-developed eye on the hurricane as it moves on toward the west. Now, we don't have any watches or warnings out for continental United States. We do have some hurricane watches out, though. For the Bahamas, here's the wind field first. This is the hurricane force winds around there, and here are the tropical storm force winds extending out a good ways as this hurricane makes its way toward the west. Here are the watches now that are in effect, and just for the Bahamas, for Luther and Andros on up. Couple hurricanes, so you have the one that we're most concerned about, that's Andrew off the east coast. But we have another one off the southwest coast of the United States, that's Lester, that is off Baja California, and that's expected to cross over Baja California. Let's start in, though, and show you the latest particulars on Andrew. And I have some new information here, with a little bit different coordinates than you see there. The west at just about 14 miles per hour. We can show you a different vantage point, a different satellite picture here. And in just a second, these we'll colorize the tops and show you where they are. There's the center of circulation right there. There you can see it real well. And you can see it moving on to the west. It's getting pretty close now to some of the Bahamas. And there are hurricane watches out for the northern Bahamas. And we would anticipate that eventually here that a watch would be put out for some of that area.
What that means is that in the Bahamas, a hurricane is anticipated. A hurricane warning means that a hurricane is likely within 24 hours. And the reason they put the warning up now is at the rate that the hurricane is moving, we expect to see hurricane conditions over the northern Bahamas by late tomorrow night. In other words, on the order of 24 hours, maybe a few hours more than that. Okay, we have Dr. Bob Sheets at the National Hurricane Center now. Dr. Sheets, you with us?
Oh, he's going to turn it when she gets him? Okay.
Bob, can you hear me? All right, I'll tell you what, let's hold off just a second here, and I can hear Bob getting ready, but it's not quite ready. All right, so let's go over this one more time. A hurricane warning for the northern Bahamas, a hurricane watch from Titusville down to the dry Tortugas. Top winds with the storm at 100 miles an hour. Hurricane force winds extend out 30 miles an hour. And the tropical storm force winds, now you're going to hear a lot about tropical storm force winds because that means winds of about 39 miles per hour, and that's when a lot of things stop. Evacuations stop, Coast Guard help on the water stops, bridges stop, a lot of things stop, okay, at tropical storm force winds. Okay, now we have Dr. Bob Sheets at the National Hurricane Center. Bob, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. We put the hurricane watch up now for the Florida East Coast. At what point are you anticipating that somewhere along that coast we'll be experiencing at least tropical storm force winds?
Well, we're looking at putting up a warning probably sometime tomorrow morning with this movement that we have right now. The earliest that we would see tropical storm force winds along our coast would be sometime Monday morning.
All right, but possibly early Monday morning, right?
Well, it could be, and it depends on whether you got 13 knots of movement or 11 knots of movement. So 1 or 2 knots when you're looking 48 hours into the future makes quite a bit of difference in time. So we're looking at sometime in early morning, perhaps.
Okay, well, what I wanted to stress was that we need to get the preparations done tomorrow and not assume we have time on Monday to be doing things.
That's right. Assuming the storm continues to move on the speeds that we have now, that's the reason we had to move up the timing on this watch and warning process. Now, if it slows down to maybe 10 knots, then we'll have a little bit more time to prepare. But if not, then tomorrow is the time to take those actions.
Okay, you've been looking obviously at the models. You have the aircraft in the storm investigating it. Are we anticipating significant strengthening, minor strengthening? What's your call there?
It's a very small, tight storm. In fact, the eye has just popped out again. This is sort of a normal kind of cycle that you go up there, drop down about 970, 974 millibars, leveled off, and now I suspect when the airplane gets in there again, which it will be in there momentarily, we're going to see deepening again. So we're recommending people prepare for a Category 3 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale. That means greater than 110 miles per hour.
Now, and you're also recommending to the emergency managers that Category 3 type evacuations take place?
That's correct.
All right, but that would not happen until tomorrow.
No, I think that it's time to wait there, because if you get a slight change in direction, you may not have all of this area that's in the watch be affected.
All right, now the area, this high-pressure area we've been talking about to the north, do any of the models indicate any potential weakening of that area that might deflect the system north?
No, I think that all models are in general agreement that it will be a basically westerly course. It might be slightly northwest, slightly southwest, and that's the reason for this watch all the way from Titusville through the Florida Keys.
Now, at how wide a distance, once we get this...
Watch our teamwork, Channel 4 News.
From your 24-hour news source, this is Channel 4 News at 6 with Jerry Helpman, Jose Diaz-Balart, Brian Allen Weather, Ned Smith Sports, and the Channel 4 News team.
From Titusville to the Florida Keys, a hurricane watch is now in effect in Florida. Good evening. With winds of 100 miles an hour, Hurricane Andrew is heading towards South Florida. Team coverage begins with Channel 4 meteorologist Brian Norcross. Brian.
Okay, Jerry, here are the latest coordinates on Hurricane Andrew. These coordinates as of 5 o'clock. Now, we're going to get coordinates at least every 3 hours, and as the storm comes closer to land, we'll get them more often than that. But as of 5 o'clock, it's 25.9 north, 70.4 west. Top winds 100 miles an hour, moving to the west at 15, and west brings it right to Miami. It's 615 miles due east of Miami. This particular latitude is essentially the same latitude that we are right here. So if the storm continues on this path, and it is heading right down the pike of due west at this point, we expect that the storm is going to be in our neighborhood here by early in the day Monday, and possibly very, very early in the day Monday. Now, the central pressure, we have two numbers here, because some people like it in millibars, other people like it in inches. 974 millibars, 28.76 inches. And the other thing to notice here is that this number, the 25.9 north, is the same latitude that we had at 2 o'clock, and also that we had at 11 o'clock this morning. Now, we do have watches and warnings in effect. First of all, hurricane warnings in effect for the northern Bahamas, including Nassau, Freeport, that's Great Abaco, that's Andros Island, and Eleuthera. And what a hurricane warning means is that hurricane conditions are likely within the next 24 hours. And here's where the hurricane watch is in effect, meaning hurricane conditions are possible. So we're standing by here for more information. We'll show you what systems are affecting this and why we think it will not veer far to the north if it veers north at all. Have that for you in just a few minutes, and we'll check in with the Hurricane Center. Jose.
Okay, Brian, thank you. With Hurricane Andrew now posing a direct threat to South Florida, preparations, as you can imagine, are essential. Team coverage continues now live with Channel 4's Gail Bright at Dade's Emergency Operations Center. Gail.
That's right, here in Southwest Dade, Jose. First of all, we do not want to create a panic situation, nor do the people inside here. They just opened a few minutes ago. As you can see, we're not allowed in there, but they are answering phones. What they want to do is provide you with enough information so that you, with your particular needs, are prepared if this hurricane should hit. Now, if you're a person who needs specific medical attention, medical supplies, anything like that, the first thing you need to do is contact your physician. The second thing you need to do, if you're taking any kind of prescription drugs, you need to stock up on those drugs, because if not, and the hurricane does hit, it could be weeks before you gain access to any kind of medical supplies.
Came to pick up this thing yesterday, and they didn't have enough. I had to make an extra trip to get 18 more. They owe me
It's very important to have a sufficient supply of the medication you'll be needing. Medication that needs to be refrigerated is of particular concern because of power outages.
If they have a generator and can generate electricity for their own refrigerator should the power go out, that would be the best case scenario. If, however, they have no means of refrigeration, they can pack the medication in a cooler and try to keep it out of direct sunlight.
Remember that hospitals are not shelters, but are there only in case of an emergency. Those needing medical attention aren't the only ones who should be preparing early. South Florida boaters, you need to make arrangements to store your boat today. The emergency management team says if it's not done today, there may not be room to store it, and there may not be time.
What happens is at the last moment, everybody says, gosh, I better do something. And they then try to crowd their boat into where you've made elaborate preparations. They cut your lines, they tangle you up, and create a generally unsafe situation anywhere you go.
25% of hurricane fatalities result from boaters trying to secure vessels in deteriorating storm conditions. More than half of the deaths attributed to Hurricane Hugo back in 1989 were boaters who drowned while attempting to save their boats. And last, but certainly not least, don't forget about your pet. Make sure he has what he needs and that he is brought inside before that hurricane watch goes into effect. Now, real quick, let me give you just a couple of phone numbers here in Dade County, 596-8735, Broward County, 357-8454. We'll have those numbers again for you in just a few minutes. Right now, back to you.
Gail, thanks for that live report. Jerry.
An emergency command meeting has just been held at Fort Lauderdale's Emergency Operations Center. Channel 4's Ari Odzer picks up our live team coverage. Ari.
Well, Jerry, we are at the Broward County Governmental Center in downtown Fort Lauderdale. This is where the EOC is located, the Emergency Operations Center. It's upstairs. Right now, as we speak, that meeting is going on. Representatives from all the local police agencies, the Broward County Sheriff, the emergency preparedness staff from the county are all up there preparing for the worst-case scenario, a visit from Andrew. On a day like this, it's hard to picture huge crashing waves and 100-mile-an-hour winds. But if Andrew blows in on Broward, that's what we'll get.
Is South Florida ready for a storm of this magnitude?
Well, you know, we haven't had one since 1964 when Cleo went through here, and there's an awful lot of people who have never experienced it. We're talking about 98% of the people. So this is a very dangerous situation for us to have that number of people inexperienced.
Broward's emergency planner says it's most dangerous for people living along the beach, the condo dwellers. If Andrew should pay us a direct visit, the hurricane's storm surge could have waves lapping as high as the 3rd floor of this building. But even so, the chances of any of these buildings actually collapsing are very remote. According to the experts, the real danger for condo dwellers comes from unprotected windows. If your windows don't have storm shutters like these over here, then you run the risk of all that hurricane debris flying around out there, smashing into your windows and causing all sorts of internal damage.
Not going through one, you really don't know what to expect. You've seen the devastation from other hurricanes, but not having been through one yourself, it's hard to believe that you would be in one. And we would watch it very closely and take it quite seriously.
So there's no chance that you wouldn't evacuate when the authorities came over here?
No chance that we wouldn't.
No.
Carol and Marvin Stone are getting ready to evacuate just in case. Before they leave, they should move any loose items inside from their balcony and take their important papers and medicines with them. The experts say people who live in trailer parks should also be prepared to move to a Red Cross shelter if a hurricane warning is issued. Trailer parks, they say, are not safe no matter how far inland they're located. And Broward boaters start looking for an inland marina to ride out the storm in. Is it too early to start thinking about moving your boat in case the hurricane comes?
Certainly not. It's time to make a plan and take things in consideration to move, certainly.
Don't delay, because when it comes time to move, time is going to be very, very valuable, and will go very rapidly.
So at least get the mental preparations ready today to act physically tomorrow.
Oh, yes, certainly be aware of it. I was surprised in several conversations this morning that many people aren't even aware of what's going on out there.
Now, there's no reason to panic, of course, but ignoring the hurricane warning at this stage could literally be a fatal mistake. Jose?
All right, thanks for that live report. As you can imagine, a hectic night at the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables. Channel 4 meteorologist Brian Norcross takes us there. Brian.
Okay, Jose, come on back.
We just lost the feed to the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables.
All right, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's take a look at the satellite loop here. We have not looked at this. Let's look at that while we try and get our feed back, because we have Dr. Bob Sheets standing by there. Now, you can see the eye here very clearly. We lost it a little earlier today, and then here it comes along, and I think you can see maybe, if any, a little shift to the south, but I think that might be just a wobble, if anything else. But now we have the man who has contact with the aircraft in the system there. Bob, let's go down to you. Bob, is this thing taking a due west course? Is that what we're saying?
We're saying due west right now, but again, it could be 2 or 3 degrees farther to the west-southwest or the west-northwest, so generally due west.
All right, the latest Air Force reconnaissance, have we seen any decrease in pressure or increase in winds?
Well, the last airplane left there at around 1 p.m., and so we'll have another one in there about another 2 hours from now.
Now, your models and what you know from the aircraft there, any indication of any reason to think that the high pressure to the north that's trapping this storm south and keeping it from going north is going to go anywhere, that there's going to be any weakness, like we like to say, in there?
No, the very strong probability that it will indeed strike Florida somewhere in that zone that we indicated there for the hurricane watch.
Now, we have Ed Odell over in the Bahamas, and he's saying the people there on the radio are hoping it's not going to come and telling people that they maybe shouldn't prepare. We don't want to encourage that in any way, do we?
No way at all. It is a relatively small storm, so the core of that hurricane could pass very close to the Bahamas without major impact there. And people here should not get a false sense of security if that happens. If the center does pass just to the north, say, of some of those islands, and they don't get a whole lot there, and people think that's what's going to happen here. That's not the case. The core of that hurricane is quite strong.
Yeah, we know from the storm surge models that we talk about all the time that it's coming up against a coastline where you get the big storm surges, and the different coastlines, it varies quite significantly in the amount of storm surge you might get, right?
That's right, and we're this core wind of 100 miles per hour now and expected to get up maybe 110 miles per hour or so. Then that area is the area that's going to suffer the greatest damage, not only from the wind, but also the storm surge.
All right, Bob, we'll be back with you with our special program coming up at 7 o'clock.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right, let's go back to Jerry, and we'll look at that loop in more detail, as well as the latest information. And also, for boaters, this is very important, what you can expect tomorrow out on the seas as you try and do things with your boat. We'll have that information for you coming up in a few minutes. Jerry.
Okay, thanks, Brian. And our hurricane coverage continues tonight. Beginning at 7 o'clock, we'll have answers to your hurricane questions. A special hour to call in and find out everything you need to know to prepare for Andrew. To get up-to-the-minute information by phone, you can call Rumor Control in Dade at 596-8735. That's 596-8735. The Broward number is not set up yet. There's one on the screen, but I'm not sure if that's accurate or not.
It'll be open.
Okay, the number on the screen is correct, 357-8454. That's Rumor Control in Broward. And don't forget our recorded number here that can give you the latest recorded information at Channel 4 in Broward, 731-7000. And then you press a code that says 4444. And in Dade County, the number is 358-8000. Again, press a code 4444.
Just want to recap there what you just saw on the screen. If we can take those numbers off the screen right now, if we could do that. Those numbers are incorrect. The numbers you gave are correct. Let me give them one more time. The number in Dade to call Channel 4 is, I have it right here, 358-8000, code 4444, and in Broward, 731-7000, code 4444. Those are the numbers Jerry gave, but on the screen, the numbers were incorrectly stated. And by the way, in Monroe, the Rumor Control number is 289-6018, or 1-800-427-8340.
Okay. Coming up next on the Channel 4 News for the second time in 2 weeks, bloodshed in a South Florida nightclub.
Fumes send Margate residents scrambling. We'll tell you what caused it.
And a hurricane watch is now in effect for South Florida. We'll take you live to the Hurricane Center in Coral Gables.
From your 24-hour news source, Channel 4 News continues.
Okay, time now to check up with Brian Norcross on the latest weather situation.
Brian, I have a question. You know, for years we've been watching storms come right through here, and they swing to the north of us. And that's what everyone thinks is going to happen. Everyone I talk to says, oh, it'll swing by us. But there's some kind of pressure system out there that's going to prevent that from happening.
Well, it's going to prevent it from avoiding Florida, okay? I mean, we have had many storms come close to us. But the thing you have to remember is that a hurricane is really a relatively small system in the overall scheme of things. We're talking about hurricane force winds over a band of only about 60 miles here. So take that 60 miles and put it on a coastline here that's maybe 400 miles long, and you see a little deviation that makes a lot of difference. Hurricane David, which everybody says missed us, hit Jupiter. And Jupiter really is not that far away, and they hit Jupiter and did $95 million worth of damage. So I'm not going to say, we're not saying in any way that the hurricane is going to come here and do the most damage in Dade and Broward County. That is not what we're saying. What we're saying is the risk is high enough that that could happen, that we need to prepare as if we knew for sure it were going to happen. Okay, let's once again check the coordinates. 25.9, 70.4 in case you're just tuning in, 100 miles per hour, west at 15, 615 miles away. Now, the watch and warning areas, the hurricane warnings in effect for all of the northern Bahamas, including, of course, Nassau and Freeport, the two large cities in the Bahamas, and the hurricane watch in effect up to Titusville, down including Dade and Broward, and off to the Keys, down to the Dry Tortugas. The hurricane watch meaning that hurricane conditions are possible within the next 36 hours. Hurricane warnings meaning hurricane conditions are probable, are likely within the next 24 hours or so. Now, here's what you were talking about, Jerry. Here is Andrew right here. Here's the weather system to the north, this high pressure. It's acting like a cap on Andrew. Interestingly, this is the normal condition in the Atlantic Ocean in the summertime, to have a big Bermuda high-pressure system sitting there and have hurricanes move down below it. We've been very lucky that when the storms have come along over many years, the system hasn't been there. It's broken down. We are in a normal situation here, and a lot of folks that live here remember all these storms deflecting, but the folks that were here in the 40s remember 9 major storms in South Florida. So this is the normal condition in the most hurricane-prone area that there is. All right, satellite loop. This is going to be our last visible picture where we really can see the concentric wall around the eye, and that's where the hurricane force winds are right there, plus or minus 30 miles. Let's roll the loop now and watch as we go through the day here today, and watch the eye right there, and you can track the center of it very clearly on a due west path, wobbling just slightly as it moves on off to the west. I need somebody to tell me how much time I have here because, okay, I want to say a couple more things here, and we're going to go to Dr. Bob Sheets here in just a second. Bob, if you can hear me, stand by. All right, notice here as we look at the system that the purple area is wider north of the eye than it is south of the eye. As a storm develops, the right-hand quadrant, it's called, as the system is moving forward, or it's moving forward toward me, the right side, which would be up here, is the stronger side. And the reason for that is the winds rotate around this way, and in this side, the motion of the storm adds to the wind speed. So if the storm is 15 miles an hour, wind speed is, say, 100 miles an hour, you've got equivalent of about 115 on that top side, and that's where the storm surge is. Okay, now let's go ahead to Dr. Bob Sheets. Bob, we talked a lot about the hurricane conditions, the tropical storm conditions coming in. We didn't talk much about tomorrow. And, of course, tomorrow is our day here to prepare boats, to evacuate, whatever needs to be done. At what point tomorrow are you thinking that we're going to see some effect from the storm?
Well, we don't think there'll be much of any kind of effect other than a beautiful day out there because it sort of clears that ring out around it, and so it is a time for people to prepare.
By late in the day tomorrow, I noticed in the marine forecast, we're talking about the possibility of northwest winds, or northeast winds, I guess, up to maybe 30 knots by late in the day, tomorrow night.
That would be late tomorrow night as the fringe effects of the storm were to get there. But all day tomorrow, it should be a beautiful day to prepare in case the storm were to come this way.
Now, for those folks who are watching us in the Bahamas, though, they need to be acting faster than here in South Florida.
That's right. We've got the warnings up over there, and so they need to be taking those actions at this time.
Okay. All right, Bob, we'll check back with you at 7 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and check on our situation here because tomorrow is our day here to take action in advance of the approach of this hurricane. For the boaters, and the boaters have a huge dilemma, and at 7 o'clock we'll be talking a lot more about this. Prepare for hurricane conditions. Tomorrow is your day to prepare. The winds will be increasing to make that, I think it's more likely to be northeast at 30, north to northeast by late in the day. By very late, we may get northwest, depends on exactly the angle the hurricane comes in, but 30 knots, which would make it very difficult to do much of moving your boat. 8 to 12-foot seas by late in the day. Rough in the bay, 87 in the surf, but early in the day, you should be just fine and we won't have any problem with taking care of your boating situation. Some showers off and on tonight, but generally it's going to be okay out there, about 80. Tomorrow, a few showers in the morning, and then increasing wind. I think plenty of sunshine tomorrow, so it should not be bad. Monday, Andrew is the big question mark. Exactly what that's going to mean is just we're waiting to see. And then it's just going to be steamy and back to normal as the storm is forecast to move across the state out into the Gulf. And it's going to be a big problem potentially for someone along the Gulf Coast after that. We'll be back at 7 o'clock with lots more. Here's Jerry and Jose.
Okay, Brian, thanks.
And thanks for watching. Now, as Brian said, from 7 to 8, we're going to have 1 hour to answer your questions. And then the nightcast at 11 o'clock will go an entire hour till midnight, so we can have the latest on that.
Right, and then at midnight, we're going to rebroadcast 2 hurricane specials for you with important information.
We'll see you at 11.
Live from the Channel 4 News Storm Center, this is a Channel 4 News Update.
Good evening, I'm Jerry Healthman. Hurricane Andrew intensifying tonight. A hurricane watch is now in effect for Florida. That means you should be prepared. We're going to take your phone calls for the next hour. We'll give you the numbers to call in just a minute, but first let's go right to meteorologist Brian Norcross. Brian.
Okay, Jerry, we're going to go ahead and check the coordinates quickly here just to kind of get you started on where the storm is, and then we're going to go live to the Hurricane Center. You see the storm 615 miles away, 25.9 north, 70.4 west, 100-mile-an-hour winds at the latest advisory. Now, we have meteorologist Jerry Jarrell standing by at the National Hurricane Center, and we're going to check in with him in just a second to see if, since this advisory at 5 o'clock, we have any either decrease in pressure or increase in wind, because both of those would indicate intensifying hurricane. Now let's go to Dr. Jarrell.
Good evening. Hurricane Andrew is about 600 miles due east of Miami. It's moving west at about 15 miles per hour. Maximum winds are about 100 miles per hour, and a hurricane warning is in effect for the northwestern Bahamas, and a hurricane watch is in effect for the Florida coast from Titusville south through the Keys. Residents of this area are advised to keep abreast of events. This is Jerry Jarrell from the National Hurricane.
All right, Jerry, we'll be back with you in just a few minutes. What they do at the top of every hour so that all stations around the state or in the affected areas can take it is they have one feed that everybody takes, and then we'll go back and we'll be able to talk to them directly. Obviously, the numbers and the information he gave you the same as I just gave you, and these are the numbers off of the 5 o'clock advisory. Now, in about 45 minutes, we'll have updated information, and we'll have that during this program. But let's go ahead once again and go over the watch and warning areas. First of all, hurricane warnings, and what a hurricane warning means is hurricane conditions are expected within the area in red there, the northern Bahamas, including Nassau, Freeport, that's Eleuthera, Great Abaco, and Andros Island here, all expecting hurricane conditions before the end of the day tomorrow. In other words, within about 24 hours. Hurricane watch in effect from Titusville down, including Dade and Broward County and including the Keys and out to the Dry Tortugas. That in effect now, a hurricane watch, meaning the hurricane conditions are possible within the next 36 hours, and indeed at the speed that Andrew is coming and the distance out in front of the storm that the winds are, we would expect the hurricane conditions to arrive here sometime midday on Monday, and possibly even tropical storm conditions very early in the day on Monday. So tomorrow is the day that all preparations need to take place.
Path of Hurricane Andrew.
It looks like our luck has run out. Hurricane Andrew appears headed towards South Florida, and tonight we are under a hurricane watch. All is calm on the Florida coast at this hour, but don't be fooled. Hurricane Andrew is out there with winds whipping at 100 miles an hour. Good evening, I'm Penny Daniels.
And I'm Sally Fitz, welcoming you to a special edition of Channel 7 News, The Path of Hurricane Andrew. We're going to be with you for at least the next 90 minutes and longer, if necessary. We are going to begin at the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables for the very latest on this hurricane's path and his power. Jerry Jarrell is going to join us live now. Jerry?
Good evening.
Good evening. When do you expect this hurricane to hit South Florida? That's the question we're all wondering at this point.
Well, it's a little early to call. Probably at the worst case, it would arrive before daybreak on Monday. More likely, it would be up in the day on Monday.
What is the status of this hurricane, Mr. Jarrell? I heard that the reconnaissance planes had flown through the hurricane and noticed that it was strengthening, that the pressure was getting lower and that it could strengthen.
That's right. It's the last wind speed we had was 100 miles per hour, but we know the pressure has dropped, and we suspect it's stronger than that. We're processing that now, and we'll have it out shortly. But we know it's up a little bit from that, probably 105 or a little more maybe.
What is the status of this hurricane, Mr. Jarrell? I heard that the reconnaissance planes had flown through the hurricane and noticed that it was strengthening, that the pressure was getting lower and that it could strengthen. That's right. It's the last wind speed we had was 100 miles per hour, but we know the pressure has dropped, and we suspect it's stronger than that. We're processing that now, and we'll have it out shortly. But we know it's up a little bit from that, probably 105 or a little more maybe. When do you expect it to hit South Florida at this point? Can you give us a probability of that happening?
Well, we have marked out the area from Titusville through the Keys as the area that we expect to be hit, and we'll have to narrow that down, and we think we'll have to do that by the advisory at 5 a.m. or the one at 8 a.m. So it's a little early to say yet, but the odds are increasing. As long as it continues to head westward, the odds keep growing.
I'm curious about your gut feeling. What do you think? Do you think it's going to hit this area or not? I know I'm asking you to project earlier than you want to, but everybody is very concerned about that.
I'm going to be up at about 5 tomorrow putting up my shutters.
All right, well, that tells us all what we should be doing. Thank you. Jerry Jarrell, live from the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables. It's their job to watch this hurricane, and they will be throughout the night and through the whole course of events through the next couple of days. We'll check back with Jerry later in this newscast. Penny?
If you want to know what to expect from Hurricane Andrew, you can keep an eye on the Bahamas, because unless the hurricane changes course, he will hit there before reaching Florida. Right now, we're going to go to Jillian Worry, who is live in our weather center. She's been tracking the storm all day long. Jillian.
Well, Penny, you're absolutely right in saying don't be fooled by the calm before the storm, because right now that's exactly what's happening. We anticipate, again, its arrival by Monday. We've seen numerous amounts of things happen over the course of this storm developing, and right now he has strengthened, and as Jerry mentioned earlier, the reconnaissance aircraft up there, the pressure is dropping. That's not exactly good. The winds are picking up now, 100 miles plus, and it continues to move west at about 15 miles an hour. Now, these are the latest coordinates. It's about 575 miles east of Miami, latitude 25.8 north, longitude 71.0 west. Again, moving to the west at 15 miles per hour. Now, keep in mind and also into consideration that although the eye of the hurricane is right here, the hurricane winds extend about 30 miles in a radius around that, and the storm force a good 85 miles. So you've got to subtract that from this distance right here, and you've got to figure, well, 80 miles, that's 500 miles away, really, if you anticipate the amount of strength that is ahead of the center of that eye. And as we take a look at the hurricane watch, it is extended now from the dry Tortugas into Titusville, and as you can see, that moves all the way from the Keys, all the way around the coast, further north, up towards, and even further past Cape Canaveral into Titusville. This area, it is just a watch right now. Of course, if conditions are warranted, we will, in fact, issue a warning, but right now a watch means that conditions could be favorable within the next 36 to 48 hours, and that will take us into Monday. However, as Sally mentioned earlier, the Bahamas are right in the way, and in fact, they are under the influence of a warning as the system moves further west. Another thing to take into consideration here, as the hurricane passes the Bahamas, they've got that area right in between, and that is exactly where the Gulf Stream is, and the mild waters of the Gulf may generate more winds and more speed, and that, incidentally, will mean more strength moving into this system. And those are the statistics for right now, and of course, I'll keep you outdated throughout the entire newscast. For now, live from the Channel 7 weather.
Watch our teamwork, Channel 4 News.
From your 24-hour news source, this is the Channel 4 News Nightcast, number 1 at 11, with Jose Diaz-Balart, Jerry Heltman, Brian Allen Weather, Ned Smith Sports, and the Channel 4 News team.
Good evening. This is a special expanded edition of the Channel 4 News Nightcast. A hurricane watch is now in effect for South Florida, and for the next 60 minutes or so, we will try to answer all your hurricane questions. Team coverage begins now with meteorologist Brian Norcross.
Okay, Jose, a hurricane watch means that hurricane conditions are possible within the next 24 to 36 hours here in South Florida. As a matter of fact, all along the southeast Florida coast. But I want to actually emphasize and go past possible to say likely within the next 24 to 36 hours. It's just because of the timing of the situation. They want to get a good handle on where this storm is going to come ashore before they put the warning into effect. Now, let's go ahead and go right to the numbers here and bring you up to date on what the latest advisory is. 25.6 north is the latitude. The longitude is 71.9 west. Winds now at 110 miles per hour, and that puts it right on the threshold between a Category 2 about to become a Category 3. Some increase in intensity is likely. It's expected this storm will come ashore, wherever it comes ashore, as a Category 3 storm, which is classified as a major hurricane with major life-threatening storm surge and damaging winds with significant damage to the coastal sections. Moving to the west at 14 miles per hour, there's the pressure, 959 millibars, or if you prefer, 28.32 inches. The storm is 520 miles due east of Miami. Now, it has been moving just slightly south. If you notice on your tracking map, just slightly south of due west. Now, it's not clear if that's just a temporary deflection or whether that is actually a trend. In any case, it's not good news for us, because even if the storm were to make a little more of a northern turn, the further south it goes, the more likelihood is that it is going to affect us. And I think as time goes on here, it is pretty clear that South Florida is going to have a direct effect, a direct hit somewhere in South Florida from this hurricane. Now, warnings are in effect. Hurricane warnings, meaning that hurricane conditions are expected within the next 24 hours. So about 12 hours ahead of its arrival here, it would arrive in the Bahamas, and that's why they already have the warnings in effect. And also, of course, the Bahamas very vulnerable because of the very low-lying islands there, Nassau and Freeport included in those warnings. The watch in effect from Titusville, which is right up by Cape Canaveral, on down the coast and all the way through Key West to the Dry Tortugas. Now, tomorrow morning, a hurricane warning will be issued. We can say absolutely somewhere on the South Florida coast. Whether it'll be Dade, Broward, and Monroe County, whether it'll be just Dade on north, really depends on where the hurricane is. If this slight southern track continues, that hurricane warning, meaning hurricane conditions are expected, you can just about guarantee it is going to be our part of South Florida and not, for instance, from Palm Beach north, if that trend continues that we see on the satellite picture now. Let's go ahead and take a look at that satellite. We have a lot of ground to cover here tonight, but I want to get the basics out of the way here just to show you exactly where the storm is coming and what the threat is. Here you see the eye right in there, and I think in the last couple of pictures you can see a little bit of deflection. Watch, here it comes, right in there. A little bit of a turn, just a slight turn to the south. As a matter of fact, it's just 5 degrees. It's not very much. And here we are right over here. So you can clearly see that the northern part of the storm, from the eye up to the top of the purple, right in there, if you bring that across, that is definitely in line with Dade and Broward County. And if it goes a little bit south, Monroe County and the Keys will be affected as well. And you see it would have to make a pretty good turn to get all the way up here. Now, there are some models that are making a slight indication that that could happen, but we're just not going to believe that. Right now, we think that most of the computers and all the guidance indicates a move in this direction here for the next 24 hours, which brings it up to us. Now, we do have the latest advisory that came out. Well, there's the close-up view of the storm, and there you can see the eye right there. We do have the latest word out of the National Hurricane Center, so why don't we go down? Let's get the 11 o'clock advisory direct from the National Hurricane Center.
We have new coordinates for the 11 p.m. advisory. As of 11 p.m., the hurricane is centered near 25.6 degrees north, 71.9 degrees west. And this position is about 520 miles east of Miami, Florida. The hurricane is moving toward the west at about 14 miles per hour, and the maximum winds now have increased to 95 knots or 110 miles per hour. So the storm is getting stronger, continuing westward towards the northern Bahamas, and then behind that towards Florida. We have a hurricane watch up for the northern Bahamas. Pardon me, hurricane warning up for the northern Bahamas. We have a hurricane watch up for Florida from Titusville southward through the Keys. And we will be entertaining the possibility of putting up a hurricane warning probably tomorrow morning for some portion of the Florida coastline.
Okay, Max Mayfield at the National Hurricane Center confirming just what we went over there, that indeed we are in a watch now, warning for the Bahamas, and a warning expected here tomorrow. All right, let's send it back to Jerry and Jose, and we'll be back with as much information as we can think of to provide you here this hour, an hour and longer.
Okay, Brian, thank you. Well, with Hurricane Andrew now posing a direct threat to South Florida, people are rushing for last-minute supplies. Team coverage continues with Channel 4's Ari Otzer.
Hi, Jerry. We're at the Albertson store on Commercial Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale. To put it mildly, this place is a madhouse. To give you an idea of what's going on just outside the store, take a look at these water machines over here. People are lined up with their jugs trying to get water over here. Is it finally working, sir?
No, sir. No water, but it takes the quarter.
It's not even working, and the reason these people are out here and the reason these machines are overworked is because there's no water to be had inside the store. In fact, these throngs of shoppers over here are clearing the shelves of needed supplies faster than the stock boys can restock them.
Live, this is a Channel 4 News Storm Center alert, tracking Hurricane Andrew.
Good morning, everyone. I know this is a trying time for all of us, but this is really not a time to be upset. It's a time to really be paying attention and knowing exactly what you have to do. Right now, let me give you the latest position. It's at 25.6 north, 71.9 west. The winds are now up to 110 miles per hour, and there's a good chance that it still may strengthen. It's 520 miles away, and it is heading directly in our direction. And so you are all going to have to keep alert all through the next 24 to 36 hours. And
This is a Channel 4 News Storm Center alert, tracking Hurricane Andrew.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Teresa Rodriguez, and Hurricane Andrew is still intensifying this morning. A hurricane warning now. It became a warning at about 7:25 this morning. It was a watch. A warning is now in effect for South Florida, and that means you should be prepared. Now, we will be with you around the clock as we watch Hurricane Andrew. For the very latest, let's go to Dr. Bob Sheets, director of the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables.
Good morning. Hurricane Andrew continues on its relentless path towards South Florida. At this hour, hurricane warnings are in effect from the Vero Beach area southward through the Florida Keys, and a hurricane watch is on effect on the southwest coast of Florida up through the area just north of Tampa Bay. People in those areas should be prepared to take action at this time. I'm Bob Sheets from the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables, Florida.
Now, for more on the hurricane, let's go to our own Brian Allen, who is standing by in our Hurricane Center. Brian, good morning. You've been watching the hurricane all morning, and you have new coordinates for us, I believe.
That's right, Teresa. Let's go ahead and take a look at the coordinates first here. These are as of 8 o'clock this morning. Currently, the latitude 25.5 degrees north. So what that means is Andrew has been holding on a direct west line. Wind speed, or the movement, actually up a little bit, west at 16. The longitude now 74.1. Pressure still about where it was at 5 o'clock this morning, 28.08 inches, or else 951 millibars. Winds are still at 120 miles per hour, so that still makes it a Category 3 hurricane. Go ahead and get a reference point here. There's where we're looking at Andrew right there. There's Miami. The difference we're talking about this morning is only about 375 miles per hour. And the questions right now are what's going to happen to Andrew as Andrew starts to encounter a little bit of some warmer water as it moves into the Bahamas, possibility of some strengthening, and also the possibility of a little bit more of some forward speed there as Andrew gets into some warmer water and starts to intensify. Let's go ahead and take you to the loop now and show you what's going on with Andrew this morning. Still have a distinct eye as we take a look at the loop and give you an idea of what's going on. There is an eye wall in there. Can we go to the loop, please, and show you what's going on as far as Andrew goes and its relationship with Florida? Okay, we'll go ahead and take you on and give you a better outline of the warnings. All the red area here, that still includes the Bahamas under the hurricane warning. Now we are in it as well. From Vero Beach southward all the way into the Keys, there is a hurricane watch and tropical storm warning from Vero Beach up to Titusville. And then out here on the west coast, we haven't put the color in yet, but from Tampa Bay just to north of Flamingo, there is a hurricane watch in there for them as well. Now we'll take you to the satellite loop and show you what's going on as far as Andrew goes. Go back and you can watch this very distinct eye, right there, the bright red and especially the bright pink. That is where the heaviest convection or the highest thunderstorm tops are going on. You can see very well defined in there, and that bright white spot is the eye of Andrew. The feeder band's right in there, and you can see, starting to see a little bit of some influence into the Bahamas right there. For us, though, it's going to be into tonight before we start to feel some minimal effects from Andrew. Once again, let me give you the correlation here. We're talking 375 miles. As soon as the loop stops, right there, 375 miles difference between us and Andrew, continuing on that westerly course. Teresa?
Brian, one quick question. When it goes through the Bahamas, will it slow it down at all?
It really doesn't look like it right now, Teresa, simply because the Bahamas is nothing but a bunch of little islands. It's not a big landmass like Florida that would slow it down, cut off all the energy that it gets from the ocean. Maybe if we're looking in here with the warmer water, it's actually going to pick up some intensification as it moves through the Bahamas.
All right, Brian, and we will be checking in with Brian in just a few moments. But first, let's go to Channel 4's David Bloom, who is at the Broward Emergency Operations Center. David, good morning.
Arrangements. All right, we're getting ready to go now to Dr. Bob Sheets, the director of the National Hurricane Center here in Coral Gables. Still keeping an eye on Andrew. Dr. Bob, I know we've got a recon flight in there, but I was just looking at the latest satellite picture, and it looks like Eleuthera is now starting to feel some of the fringe of Andrew right now.
Well, yes, that's the cirrus cloud that's coming out over the top of the hurricane at this time. The recon is in there, indeed found the pressure down to 934 millibars, so that's a continuing strengthening of that hurricane. But you're seeing the fringe effects. Now, this is mostly cirrus, so there's not any strong winds. It's really back in here where the strongest winds are, the rain bands and so on.
What are we looking at as far as the field radius for the tropical storm winds approaching in toward Eleuthera, and also the depth of the winds back before we hit the hurricane strength winds?
Out on the west side there, they're probably running out there maybe 50, 60, 75 miles. So something out in this zone. So they'll be coming across to Eleuthera within the next 2 to 3 hours. We'll start seeing the winds pick up there.
Have you had any reports out of the Bahamas yet as far as what's going on out there?
No, and you'll probably get those before we do. We have the surface observations that we're getting from the Bahamas themselves, but nothing yet.
934, you said, as far as 934 millibars for the pressure for this. Do you think we're looking at a 4 by the time the next advisory comes out, Dr. Sheets?
Yes, that's getting very close to that strength of a Category 4. That's similar in the pressure that Hugo made landfall in South Carolina.
Let me ask you this now. If we're possibly looking at a 4 on the way, what does that change now for Dade and Broward County?
Well, the areas that are ordered for evacuations are very close in those Category 3, strong Category 3. That's what we were dealing with, as compared to just barely in a Category 4. We talk about these magic thresholds, but 5 or 10 miles per hour difference in wind doesn't make a whole lot of difference.
All right, Dr. Sheets, we'll be checking back in.
I'm Jillian Moore. Down to is about 330 miles east of Miami lies the center of this eye, or the eye of the hurricane. And remember, the winds around that radius a good 85 miles outside the exact eye in the form of tropical storm force. Now, as we head a little bit closer to the eye, a good 35 miles outside of that are hurricane force winds. Now, they're backing speeds of 145 miles an hour. And boy, every time I hear Dr. Sheets speak, I'm waiting for him to say we could be going to a 5. But right now, it is just a 4. It has been upgraded quite rapidly, and the only concern that I would probably have, and a lot of the meteorologists are saying, that as it passes through the Bahamas, not that it's going to lose any strength there, because of the size and the magnitude of the system passing through the Bahamas is really nothing in comparison to the actual strength of it. But as it passes the warm bodies of the Gulf Stream, it may generate more moisture, it may generate more speed, and Lord knows more strength. Not exactly what it does need, but it could be getting more strength. It's sort of like a car stopping at a gas station to refuel, although this one is not going to stop. And by the time it hits Miami, it could be up to 155 miles an hour winds, and that again constitutes hurricane force. So again, it is a Category 4. It's gaining strength. Right now, we'll take a closer look at the affected areas. A tropical, or I should say a hurricane warning is in effect from Vero Beach into the Dry Tortugas. A hurricane watch remains in effect for and from Bayport into Flamingo, and a tropical storm watch warning right here from Vero Beach into Titusville. So Vero Beach is kind of the area that we're watching right now as far as it's bordering the warning, tropical storm warning and hurricane warning. So once again, we will completely monitor the system throughout the day. Steve Adams, as well as myself, and with the help of Dr. Bob Sheets, and of course everyone involved here. It's Lord knows, please take this very seriously, because it is on its way, moving west at about 16 miles an hour. And of course, we'll keep you updated. For now, I'm Jillian Moore, live at the Channel 7 Weather Center. Back to you.
For all of you who think this is a dream, it may seem like one, but it is not. Hurricane Andrew is knocking on our door. It is a Category 4 right now.
Okay, we're back here. We're standing by for the National Hurricane Center. It's 15 seconds after 1 o'clock here. Dr. Bob Sheets, I guess, is going to give us the latest advisory here. 145 miles an hour was that last report. All right, let's go down, and we'll take a breath here and let Bob Sheets take over here for just a minute or two.
Good afternoon. Hurricane Andrew continues on its course toward the southwest to southeast Florida coast at this hour. The aircraft has now reported the pressure is now dropped to 922 millibars. Winds are now near 150 miles per hour, estimated at the surface. The eye of that hurricane will likely move across somewhere here in South Florida sometime in the early morning hours tomorrow. I'm Bob Sheets from National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables, Florida.
Brian Norcross, it seems like every time we hear from Dr. Sheets, the millibars, the pressure within that hurricane goes down, and that means the winds are going up.
And that's how they do it. All right, we'll talk more about that in just a second and what that means. But I think we do want to scare people.
I think we do because we got this is clearly a life and death situation, and if you are not fearful, if you are not frightened at this point, and you live in Dade, Broward, and Monroe counties, then you're in trouble.
Because you don't understand the gravity of the situation. It is an unprecedented event in the history of the world. Never before has a storm of this strength hit a major metropolitan area. It's just that simple. There is nothing in your experience, in your knowledge, to compare this event to. So all you folks that have been around here a long time, don't compare it to some hurricane that you knew about before. Don't compare it to the 1926 hurricane that in a large measure wiped the city out. Do not compare it to any event before. It is an unprecedented event.
You're not mincing any words here.
No. I mean, when we came in today...
Yes, I mean, you started to mince words earlier today.
Well, yeah, because we had a 120 or 130 mile an hour storm comparable to 1926. And since 1926, the building codes have been improved, and we're talking about a storm at the limit of the building codes, but we know in general they're better than that level. But now we're at a point that the normal roofs that we have on houses are at risk, not that they're all going to blow off, but that I would be very surprised in the area where the strongest part of the storm hits to find any building without damage.
Jeez.
Any
All right.
building.
Ileana Bravo is on Miami Beach now. Ileana?
Yes, Bob, this is